We are honored to be joined by Colonel Doc Peters. How are you, sir?
Happy to be alive, brother. Doing good.
Hey, man. The last time we spoke, about a year or so ago, I know you've been a big friend and supporter of the Today with Tally podcast, so we do appreciate that. But, it
Sure.
was we were going through some pretty turbulent times, and yeah, I guess we still are, and then until the 20th, huh?
Roger that. Yeah, we're sliding into the beginning of the end of this chaos is the way I look at it. We're just the beginning of the end of the chaos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely incredible. So I do want to get to the border here.
Yep.
A couple questions about that and where things stand now, especially with this new administration coming in.
Yeah.
But look, you spent well over 30 years in the military,
Hmm.
and now you're still giving back to this great country and to the state of Texas, working on the border. But look, I have so many veterans that reach out on a daily basis, weekly, monthly basis that are struggling. They're having difficulty in their marriage. They are abusing drugs and alcohol. They're just falling apart.
Hmm.
Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, you name it, they're suffering from it. And a lot of veterans in the country look up to you, Doc Pete. And I want you to perhaps give some encouragement or perhaps some inspiration to some of these veterans out there this holiday season that are struggling mightily in the country.
Yeah, this is the season for that, brother. And I'm, this just fell on the heels of a big event we did out in Houston with a bunch of vets on Saturday. This past Saturday was great. Seeing these guys and just talking to them about reality, right? Not the
Mhm.
optics of things, but the reality. And me being transparent with them. Look, I'll say it, I've been there at the very bottom, man. 39 years total for me, but active guard and reserves. Over 20 years active. I've seen it all, done it all, been with them all. Best of the best, and at moments the worst of the worst. Where I get a phone call and a family member says, "Hey, Dad just killed himself," and so I've dealt with that. Counseled a lot of guys. Brought them back from the downward spiral. But it is that time of year. It is, and now having lived through this, and this is what I just told these guys. Saturday. Having lived through all this and my testimony in a way of starting back in 1983 under Ronald Reagan and getting out under this current regime, but finishing out on the border, which is what put me into this job. Doing all that, I realized that it's purpose. The bottom line is purpose. All right. Now, I'm a believer and God, shows me my purpose, but our purpose as warriors, is to either you're on the tip of the spear and you're finding and fixing and finishing the enemy, or you're supporting that operation for that to happen, right? That's the two categories, big picture, all branches. And so when we do 20 years of war and then we come out of it, it reminds me of my uncle, Pat. I'm just talking about him, Vietnam vet, UH-1, Huey door gunner, shot down a couple times, Vietnam, survived all that, came back, productive guy, PTS, post-traumatic stress. He didn't have what I would call the disorder side of it, because he was able to get up and go to work, right? If you can get up and do your job, make your bed, go and do whatever, you don't give yourself that nomenclature, but get out there and look for work, because that's what we did every day when we got up in the barracks. As an enlisted guy, I did, and as an officer, led guys that did that. But it's that purpose-driven life, if you will, that I watched these guys in Houston, and look, these guys are, at the end of their ropes, many of them, and meeting with them face to face, treating them like a man, shaking their hands, talking about purpose, talking about hope. It's not hopium. We're not talking about hopium. That's a drug. We're talking about hope, real hope, based upon the principle of look for work, which is amazing to see the transformations. But it's a job, man. And this border thing that's coming up, with the new administration that's coming in, I call that administration, right? The last regime. With this administration coming in, we've made some friendship there, and I'm seeing a lot of places where veterans can go back to work.
Yeah, because that's just it. I mean, the majority of them are suffering from a complete identity loss, you know, from where they used to be and where they're at right now. And
Mhm.
look, everybody has a set of different circumstances on why they may be in this position.
Mhm.
It's just happening more often in the veteran community. Per capita, if you look at the country, we got 20 million American veterans. We got 335, Americans. So, I mean, it's still a small percentage, but that's where a lot of the vulnerable and at-risk communities lie, is within the veteran community.
Right.
Now, you were talking about that there could be some opportunity down on the border, looking for a few good men, if you will.
Yeah.
Explain.
Yeah, for me, this all started a couple years ago when I came off of active orders in the National Guard of Texas and operating on the border specifically, right? Because that was my area of operations. I understood it. I know what the players are. Brought on a bunch of guys that work with me specifically on border operations, which is great. But then in meeting Mr. Tom Homan, the border czar now coming in, we had some discussions. We went down to Mar-a-Lago. That's how we say it in Texas, Mar-a-Lago. So we were down in there. We're meeting with him, and he came here. We met with him here, and it's really, the operation is not border centric. It is from the southern border to the northern border, east coast to the west coast. This is a CONUS, continental United States problem set, and there are going to be a lot of different jobs. Not all putting hands on people, grabbing them and taking them, put in cuffs, but you've got facilities. You've got repatriation facilities, so to speak, that are being lifted up right now down in South Texas. 1,400 acres is being built specifically for that. And so those jobs, when you get out there and they start to, I've seen the playbook a little bit, and when they get out there, starting asking for help, there will be a lot of jobs. Look, 1 million, over a million, well over a million veterans in Texas alone that could fit the bill for, from the recent GWAT on. That's a large gene pool for me, you meet, and all the others to pull from.
I got a question. Just something I was thinking about. I have had on John Fabricatore, who was running for Congress in Aurora, Colorado, and he was the gentleman that helped move out the woman who went viral with all of those videos from Tren de Aragua. And President Trump said, our first order of business is going to be Operation Aurora. And basically, it's going to start in Aurora, but it's a national operation that is going to begin to rid all of these illegal criminal aliens out of our country first, before they start going to just your, illegal aliens that are here, unlawfully. Is that going to be something that is, like even doable to get that, to round up that many folks? I mean, to put it into realization, we have got millions here. And a lot of them are going to be protected, by these sanctuary cities. And I know Tom Homan said that he would go in there and arrest mayors and whoever got in their way. But is this going to be possible to carry out this type and size of operation?
Absolutely. And here's the way to look at that, though, because it seems insurmountable. Chaos and all that kind of stuff is tremendous job to do. However, the story of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. They came in, over what, 8, 10, maybe 15 years, where we started to see the ramp up. It died down during the Trump administration. It kicked back again on steroids during the Biden administration. Obama administration was terrible. I've seen it. And so in doing that, it's got to be stair steps. So like the deck of cards we used to have in Iraq, where we went after the high tier targets, those guys are going to be the ones that are going first, right? The ICE and all those organizations out there, Border Patrol, they're going to be focused on the ones that are the overstayed visas and through the legal processes, and some of those that might have some sort of protection, and holding their feet to the fire and saying, hey, you're an overstayed visa, time for you to go home. But for us, the target that we're looking at is because our guys are all military. We have everything from tier 1 operators to administrative types. So when we look at that, then we figure out what wedge of the pie do we have. Now we focus on counter human trafficking. Tom Homan just came out today and specifically said that will be one of the main focuses. When you kick it off in Aurora, that's just a small thing that's happening across the nation, but it was the one that got, as you said, the most attention at that time, which is good. That's one of the other things we do is this information ops. We're doing information ops right now. We're letting people know the facts. And so when you see that, this is a multi-pronged line of effort where you've got to hit the legislators. You got to talk about, for the legislators, hey, stop the money that's being, hemorrhaging in the places like the Ukraine and all these other places where that money should be used for the nation, right? National homeland security, those kind of things. Let's hold their feet to the fire. And I see that multi-pronged, stopping the bleed on the money, funneling the money back to us. And so then NGOs, non-governmental organizations like us, which are 501c3, 508c1as, all these organizations, then we can come in and then go to work, and there'll be grants. I'm working on a grant right now that will then allow us to fall in that category of, okay, now you have authorities, advise, assist, accompany law enforcement to do it legally, morally, ethically, all that. Get our guys, all of our guys are credentialed in the state of Texas under Texas Council of Law Enforcement. So that's the key. And then you got to deputize. And he mentioned that today, deputizing. He talked about everybody will be a deputy in a way. But what that means is people, if you see something, say something. If you get all Americans involved that care, then your information operations go through the roof, and then your information, intelligence drives operations. So then these teams can go find these people a lot quicker when everybody's looking for them.
Sure. And to go back to Operation Aurora, what that Mrs. Romero did was absolutely, very courageous, because, look, it could have swayed an election because, the optics of that was very, it opened a lot of eyes in this country from people that said, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. That's not happening. And all of a sudden she's got over 80 some videos of it happening. And the gentleman was later taken out that next day from that door where they were knocking on. So, she had to get out of there. It was completely under siege, and absolutely incredible testimony that I heard, not only from John himself, but from Mrs. Romero, who agreed to come on the program, kind of share her story. But let's face it, the cartel on the southern border is probably not going to lay down when this new administration comes in. And they haven't had any pushback for quite some time, and they are doing whatever they want when they want.
Yeah.
What type of scenarios may we see on the southern border with the cartel once Trump takes back the presidency?
Right. That's a great question. You mentioned the TDA, the Tren de Aragua. It's a terrorist organization. The governor of Texas has labeled it as such. So we'll just use the governor's, he calls in and says, hey, I need Title 10 orders for my National Guard, they're already on the border now. We give them Title 10 orders, give them authorities, and then those guys can do their job, right? Because that's where I came from, the green suiters, if you will. And now for us, then what that would look like is now you have you have money that's then going to be appropriated by Congress. They're the ones who write the check, and Congress will then get that to come down to us, also through the grant side, to come into, when I say us, the state of Texas, but now us as an NGO, the grant side, the GSA contracts that will be available in the billions. Okay, so we can't run all that. We're very small, but all the organizations that are briefing Mr. Homan now, there are a lot of briefings that have taken place. Those monies will be funneled to them because I can't put gas in a tank, get across, the state of Texas without funding. Well, we've been doing it through donations, but now we can get it through grants. We'll get it through those GSA contracts, and with our appropriate, authorizations, appropriate commissionings, if you will, deputizations, we can go do that. And then we can support law enforcement in the movement of these people, because we don't have to kick the doors. Law enforcement can do that. That's their job. Right, the SWAT teams and all those things that exist. So that's what that would look like. Those guys can focus on that. the cartels, of course, they're in a non-permissive environment now for them, right? They're just operating with complete impunity. And you know, the border from I'll just use an example, the town of Roma, where I worked a lot on the border in the Rio Grande Valley. From Roma to 90 miles in, when I was on the border 3 years ago, two to 3 years ago, they operated completely in the wide open. It was so many out there. You're looking for a needle and a stack of needles. Now we're going to narrow it down, shut down the inflow, right? Because that's the chaos. And when you have chaos, that's where those guys look for seams and gaps. And now those seams and gaps are going to be harder for them to find. And we're going to stop playing whack-a-mole, stop thinking right of bang after the IED already hit, start thinking left of bang. And that's really where the intelligence operations come in and all that. Information operations on the open source side for us, because we don't operate in the on the red side.
It takes one bullet to create an international incident that could potentially lead into a war on the southern border. Right. Again, what made that look like if something like that happens? Because I've heard that we would have a very hard time of fighting the cartel, just because of the mass numbers of, you know, of them, and then others joining in. And look, let's face it, they're all over the United States, all 50 states. You know, like you said, every state is a border state. And again, unprecedented. These are
one bullet. Okay, let's look at it this way. Under the Biden administration, when we were on the border, there was a crew serve weapon on the south side. We call that the Mike side in Mexico that opened up on our guys on the border. Right? It doesn't make the news. This kind of stuff doesn't ever make the news. But our guys just hunkered down. They were probing. They were looking, trying to figure out where our guys were at. They were testing our TTPs, our techniques and practices. How are we going to respond? Our guys played it cool. Didn't give up their positions because it's nighttime and they don't want to start doing that. Plus, the rules of engagement are very tight on the border for us because we don't want to have that incident. Right. However, when we do at the federal level now, not the state level, at the federal level, have these incidents like this that are going on all the time, you just don't hear about it. Then what we will be able to do then is that point is then the federal side needs to say, hey, these guys are transnational criminal organizations, foreign terrorist organizations, a labeling as such, and then allow our guys, if we have to, active duty side, to go in and then and take some of these out. What is that going to create? Well, that's going to create an incident, right? So now it behooves this Department of State to have this already worked out, right? And that's why I like where Trump came in and said, all right, we're going to tariff you to death. Right. And you're not going to be able to move your products across into the United States. And you see the current president of Mexico going, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, we've got these caravans coming up. Perhaps we should stop them. Right. Because when I was there, I watched the Mexican army from a helicopter on the Rio Grande moving people, the Mexican army pushing people to the border to get them out of their country. You know, for 17,000 Haitians at one time over a 24-hour period. I witnessed it from the air. So now we'll be able to say, no. You're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to be corralling these people like cattle across the border. You're going to hold the line there, and then would have to be agreed upon with a joint operation with the Mexican army, who has many good people in there. We've negotiated with them before, the federales, you know, the police. Then to do a combined operation with our guys, and that's really that's a diplomacy thing, because otherwise it's going to end up like a Clausewitz thing, von Clausewitz, who said, you know, war is diplomacy by other means. We don't want to go there. We don't want to go to war. What we want to do is use the appropriate resources in a diplomatic way if we continue to receive this kind of fire or this kind of attack on our side, because they have to be scared. There has to be something in it to keep them from doing what they could potentially do, which is pretty dangerous.
Sure. You know, as a country, you know, as Mexico, you know, as a country, they could be scared. Their government could be scared, you know, with the tariffs and all that stuff. Like you said, hey, they're just going to tariff us to death. But the cartel is not. And these guys are always looking for a fight. You know, we see it on the streets every day in Mexico. Very dangerous. I mean, I think Mexico is now the most dangerous country in the world.
Well, let's just start it right here. I mean, stop going to Mexico for vacations. I mean, that's they're probably their second most income producing thing that they have down there. But also understand that if we don't do it, right, Then the continued operations that are trafficking people as they get, they have the peso tax, they call it. These people get a little band around their wrist. They come across the border, $4,000 for a family at the time when I was there. Interesting people like from China or from the Middle East, $30,000 a head to come across that border. They were making, at one point, the Cartel del Noreste was specifically making about $400 million every month on human trafficking, right? So they're thinking, we don't care about drugs. I mean, they're going to still do it, but they're making a lot more money with that because they don't have to deliver the product to somebody in the streets of Chicago. All they got to do is get these bodies across the border and they're done. And so to them, they were making a lot more money doing that. We shut that down. Money dries up. They've made billions at this point. But we've got to start somewhere, because otherwise that problem set, as that hemorrhage coming into the country of people that are being used as pawns, as well as the gotaways that are potentially going to be cells in our country of bad guys, that's got to stop. Like, shut the ports of entry. Tell them you're not coming in until you guys do something on the south.
So when that money does dry up, are these cartels going to get desperate enough to want to engage and say, no, you are not going to stop us. This is too, profitable for us. And we're in bed with the government anyways.
Yeah, they're seeing the writing on the wall now. I mean, that's why you see 2 huge caravans en route from the Darien Gap on their way right now. This is intelligence that we know about. Open source. Our guys are reporting. You got Michael Yon down there again, reporting back to us and letting us know this is coming. That's the play. I mean, that's the play right there. So they will get vitriolic. They will be back on their spurs. They're not going to like it, but otherwise we just continue to hemorrhage. And so we've got to stop it somewhere. We'll see what they do. I mean, you're going to force their hand, but when they are on their spurs, just like a football player, just like a close quarter battle, you hear somebody's magazines dropping in the next room. They're on their heels. That's when we go in and we really work hard. And I don't mean go in and attack them, but we full court press with all resources from the State Department down to local law enforcement. It has to be that way. That's why it's a coordinated effort. And I believe that is the job of the border czar, is to coordinate it through all the entities that would be, as he answers directly to the executive, right? The chief executive, the president. He doesn't fall in under Department of Homeland Security. Great job for him. He is the guy to do that. Tom Homan.
Hey, Brian Talley here with the Today with Talley podcast. Are you looking to advertise with the podcaster? Why not be me? We will help take your business to the next level, folks. It's easy to do. All you got to do is go to briantalley.com. That's briantalley.com. We have 3 packages. We work with any budget, folks. We have the bronze, the silver, and the gold packages to work with you. We work with any budget. If you want to be a show sponsor, contact me, briantalley.com. I look forward to working with you and your business. Now, back to the show. Yeah, the border is just full of so many holes, Gab. It's Swiss cheese, and there are so many puzzle pieces right now to this hectic situation, and one of them being fentanyl. Let's face it, this country is going through an epidemic of opioid addiction in this country, and it's my understanding that China has been funding and producing in the manufacturing process of this deadly fentanyl that is pouring across our southern border.
Right.
Now, if we get in there and get really aggressive on this southern border, could you see China even getting involved in helping facilitate the transfer of these drugs into our country?
Well, China has already been involved with doing that in the production side of fentanyl, so that they can do it there right at the cartel level. China, Venezuela are huge factors in this piece, right? Venezuela, the cartel, I'm going to say this wrong, Los Solos cartel, the cartel of the sun. All right, that is the largest government-backed cartel in the world. All the other ones pale in comparison to that one. and that one runs everything, because if they say do it, they do it, because they've instead of fighting each other, they've all gotten together and said, okay, we're going to work on this. Now you see firefights across the border once in a while between some lower level thugs, but for the most part, that organization in Venezuela, the Chinese on the fentanyl side, one of the pillars of all this stuff, you have human trafficking, which is everything from sex trafficking to organ harvesting, and then you've got the other pillar being, the process of destabilizing us from within. This is Yuri Bezmenov stuff, demoralizing us with drugs. It's been going on since the 60s. But it also creates one thing that we're going up against, which is the black money funds. That black money that doesn't exist on any ledgers it pays for, it ends up in the hands of people like Soros. I'm going to say it straight up, like the Clinton Foundation, which then uses these things to destabilize us more from within. You'll see the Antifa, and I could reference those things, BLM riots that took place, where those were funded heavily by this black money. It would seem like a very organized attack upon this nation, and it's been going on for. China had a 40-year plan, 100-year plan. I mean, this is what they said they were going to do, and they're trying real hard to do it with the help of some of our legislators, maybe many of them without knowing it. Some of our corporate level things that allow demoralization to go on in the country to where people just don't care, and that's part of that attack. Fentanyl, definitely a heavy problem.
Yeah, it doesn't discriminate. I mean, it's hitting affluent neighborhoods all the way down into the hollers in Kentucky, right, and up through West Virginia. I mean, it's hitting everywhere, yeah. And it is a massive problem because look, like kids are going to maybe pick up a joint or whatever it may be, and right, they don't deserve to have their life taken away for doing that. It's. Right. Yeah, of course, stay away from drugs. Me, I'm scared to death of them. I'm a DARE student. Let me as a kid, and let me
put out a warning on that, because here's the deal. I got a great friend back in my hometown, 3,000 people, small town. He was the postmaster, and he'd like to dabble with a little marijuana here and there, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the guy gets a joint, and it was laced with fentanyl. He coded. I mean, he died right there. Yeah. And they did an autopsy. They found it, and he his source, where it came from, they finally got to it. They had laced it with fentanyl. So that right there is enough of a deterrent for me. And that's why I tell people about it. This was a guy I've known forever, great guy. This is not a safe world that we're in. And these people don't care. When if you Jason Jones, and he, Border 911 Project, and a reporter on the border, former DPS, Department of Public Safety intelligence guy. Jason Jones does an eloquent job of this, because he's been on the front lines of that for years, and he's going to be working with Tom Homan, has been working with him, and he'll tell you they don't care about killing Americans, because there's enough people out there they're going to continue to make money in that line of effort. That drug pillar, if you will, that's one of the mainstays of this border problem, which is a nation problem.
Mm-hmm. I want to get your take on something completely different now, if you don't mind. You're just a great interview. The drones. We have had hundreds of sightings of drones over New Jersey, up in the Northeast.
Yep.
Nobody seems to know what it is. And we have a spokesperson from the Pentagon yesterday basically saying, there's no threat here, but we don't know what it is.
Right. There's a perfect, yes, that is a perfect example. Yeah, perfect example. And I'm glad you brought that up. Perfect, because it's fresh. Yep. Perfect example of somebody that spent this many days in combat reporting on things that are at the tactical level, right? The ground, even though it's in the air, it's ground level. It's not strategic. It's not operational, although it can be. But at the ground level, this to me just smells of, looks of, tastes of a probing attack. So let's go test and see how they respond. Just like the balloons that went across the country, whoever you want to say that is, let's see how they respond. There's a news cycle. People forget. Let's see what happens. So they've got it in a specific area. Then they've got drones up there, and there's some footage that just came out today of some kind of chemical spraying from it. So it could be a disinformation campaign. We got to consider that. It could be something, but when the Pentagon can't explain it, there's one of two things: either they're so damn dumb that they can't explain it, or they're a part of it. It's the only two that we got. When they come out and say, "Well, I just don't know what it is," well, to me, it's a probing. They're looking to see what the response will be, and they did it in so of an overt way, in your face. Whoever it was that was doing it. Look, I flew a drone down on the border on December the 18th, looking at about 12,000 Venezuelans coming across. I knew I had 25 minutes before they would pinpoint where my point of origin site was, where our guy with the little device was, and we were reporting, getting some information out, watching these people come across 12,000 over 24 hours. And yeah, I knew they were going to come. So my guys shut it down. I said, "You got 25 minutes, go," because they're on a bluff overlooking the river. And sure enough, here they come, Border Patrol guys looking. "Hey, y'all see anybody here with drones?" I'll admit to it right now. Yeah, that was us. We did it. Okay. We got a picture of some people coming across the border from the US side. We didn't fly over Mexico. But the point of it is that we have the technology to figure out who's flying it on the ground. Send somebody out there, just like those guys did, and send them to that point of origin and figure out who is flying this thing, because that stuff is doable. You can actually capture the electronic, and I'm not an electronic guy, a tech guy, but you can capture that information that's in that drone and make it land on the ground. So if you really care, Pentagon or Department of Homeland Security or FBI or local law enforcement, if you really cared and had the wherewithal to do it, you can do it, because we do it on the border.
Yeah. If a cartel terrorist organization that doesn't have NORAD behind them and Northern Command and all of these other assets that our country has can pinpoint you in 25 minutes, and we don't know what's going on over our country, I have been lied to my whole life. I always thought that the United States of America was the country that you could not do anything to without any consequences, right? But we have become so weak.
Right. Well, here's the saying you got to get used to, because it's this state right here, and it's said a lot. I'm going to use a kinder word here. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Yeah.
Right. Because right now I measure 3 times to cut once. I confirm, the story 3-4 times to make sure this is the place where we're at, because the mainstream media is not going to tell you. Matter of fact, they might even play a disinformation on us. We don't watch them anymore, right? A lot of us don't. That's great. But the money, the people that write the checks again on Capitol Hill, that trickles down to us on the ground at the tactical level, they paid more attention to that and their lobbyists than they do anything else. There are some great people up there. I know a few. I used to know a lot of them up there, but now I know a few that are great people that really care about this nation. And they got to start, working on that National Defense Authorization Act and stop slipping, the little, subcategory, line items in that are opposite of what national security should be.
Yeah. Did we not learn from what happened, I don't know, a year and a half, year or two, the Chinese spy balloon that flew across the country? It came in from the north, and then it went in down through the south, through, I think it started up north, like in Montana or whatever. That's and then it came in down through the Carolinas and then off into the Atlantic. But this is just, again, it is unforgivable what is going on here. And look, lame duck presidency, lame duck Congress, and the world knows, well, they got 35, 40 days to play, if you will, and kind of finish the 4-year project of destabilizing the United States of America. And they've done a great job in a very short period of time. And a lot of that is because of a lot of our guys, our American players have allowed it, and we've allowed it with no pushback. And I know you're doing a lot of hard work down on the border, but look, you're one guy. You can only do so much, and I know you have other assets that are down there that care deeply about this country, that are constitutionalists. And but again, hands are tied here. I have heard through Fox News that this could be Iran perhaps testing the waters with drones to take out President Trump, to try to attempt another assassination. They are flying these all over his big golf course up there in the Northeast, and perhaps this could be again some dry runs here. But how will the U.S. react? But again, when Trump gets in office, this all goes away.
Yeah, they like to use Iran as the proxy bad guy, and they may or may not be. I don't know. I don't have that information. That's why you got to get one of these on the ground to look at the components. That's what we do when we look at anything that comes across the border. Look at the components and figure out where it came from. And so, yeah, that is definitely a consideration in the differential diagnosis of this thing is an Iranian backing, but I'm not really convinced on that. I've seen other things that makes me think otherwise, and it's just there are some major corporations out there that are, some overseas, some in the United States, that have a lot of money and are willing to take black money to make things happen, right? And so I've seen that, and so I just put that in the differential as well as a possibility. I don't have the wherewithal, nor the manpower to investigate that. We could very easily do that with, we've got a JSOC targeter on my team, Joint Special Operations Command targeter, retired. We could do that. Requires funding. So it's one of those things that it's a problem set number 255,000.
Yeah, and again, this should not be a partisan issue, and yet
No.
Capitol Hill and the Pentagon and John Kirby and all these guys are making it a partisan issue. And it's like, dude, this is an American issue. This is a sovereignty issue. This is the United States of America. Like, aren't we on the same team here? But apparently we're not on the same team, and they've proven that for the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's we are the in a sense, if we allow ourselves to be, we're the useful idiots that they talked about. This is a Saul Alinsky thing, the rules for radicals. I believe that might have been a term from a Russian president or something back, and it might have been Stalin or something like that. The useful idiots. You create this Hegelian dialectic, which I call Fox News and CNN, and everybody argues here, but we're missing the drone, or we're missing this over here. And we're trying to justify it in a realm where we're never going to get to the truth because we're arguing back and forth this way. Yeah. But what I'm seeing now, and this is, we're called the Remnant A team, the remnant, the people that aren't dumb enough to believe any of this stuff, or in my book, the people of faith, or a combination thereof. It is those people that say, wait a minute, this just doesn't make a lick of sense. There's another saying we have is, how damn dumb can you be? So let's start thinking about, real national security, get out of that Hegelian dialectic and start operating with facts and measuring a few times before we cut something. We've got to do it right. This is the, we're in the red zone, and unfortunately it's our red zone, but we still can get to the other side of the field.
One last thing. How are you liking the cabinet picks from President Trump?
Yeah, I'm seeing some that are concerning in the sense that I gauge things on what they did during the COVID thing, especially for the medical side, because I focus there a little bit. I love Pete Hegseth. I don't want a general to come in there because the generals have been through the War College, and the War College is a DEI producing course right now. They focus there. They have been. And so we got to fix that. We got to purge probably about 200 generals. That's in the process of being done. But when you got a field grade officer in Pete Hegseth, a combat veteran who understands and has been a proponent for our guys in the veteran side, now you got a guy that's savvy. He doesn't have to be a general. He just has to be savvy enough to know what BS smells like and go, wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, we're not playing that no more. We need to think about war fighting, closing with and destroying the enemy, as the Marines like to say. That's what we need to think about. But we also have to think about the fact that the moral institution, or the moral bankruptcy that's at the high levels of all the agencies at the top, DOJ, DOD, the intelligence community, those things have got to be purged. They've got to be just cut off. And look, we've got more generals now than we had in World War II, and our fighting force is a tenth the size or less. So we don't need all those generals. They're just strap hangers at this point. They're just waiting for their next job at Raytheon, Boeing, you name it. So let's get rid of them. We don't need them. Keep the war fighters, keep the people at the operational level and down. Bring up the guys like me that were former lieutenant colonels and things like that still have reality, right, in their mix, which means I know my troops, they know me, I care about them. I'm not climbing the stair to get to Raytheon. Let's go with those guys and get out of the political realm. Military is apolitical. I mean, it should be, right? I wasn't allowed to lean either way. I could talk about it with my friends, but I couldn't actively go say, hey, I'm going to put he, him, or I, or it as my, nomenclature. I said this one time to one of the members of the Joint Chiefs. I said, when all this was starting, I said, well, I identify as invisible. I'm a transparent. I am transparently invisible. And so, I'm working in the shadows. And they didn't get it, right? They're like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, there you go, right? You're trying to figure out, you're transparent. What does that mean? You have kids and you're trans? No, what I'm saying is stop with the games, right? Because that's all fake. That's all the optics are. We do war and we stop the enemy and we win. But after 20 years of doing that, and you talk about our veterans being demoralized and depressed, and then to watch it just all disappear, much like my Uncle Pat in Vietnam, who ended up, being demoralized. He turned it around. It took him some time, but God bless America. We got to get this right and stop fighting these crazy wars that really don't mean anything. Somebody does something to our nation, let's go after them. Let's get it done. Surgical and very limited in a sense, because we can't fight right now a war on two fronts in this nation. Largely.
Yeah, especially in Syria. Like, hey, look, we don't have a dog in this fight.
Right.
We just got out of a 20-year war, and the way we cut and run was embarrassing and disgusting at the very least. And that's the last thing that we need to put our troops through again.
That's right. We've got, speaking of Syria, we've got two different factions fighting there. One of them's armed by our own intelligence community, and the other one's armed by our DOD. So it's the next Ukraine. It's just to create this constant state of war, and it's feeding the corporatocracy, which is not really. I didn't vote for.
It's an absolute funnel, and it's the 20th cannot get here soon enough. But look. A year ago when we last talked, we were a thread pull away from utter chaos and losing our country. Now I'm very optimistic on what is to come in the United States of America, because we will have a rebirth of this country, if you will. Right. That is coming. And, and the American people spoke very loud and very clear on Election Day that we are tired of being tired, and we must take our country back and to protect this nation, to keep that Liberty Bell here at home ringing from sea to shining sea. Because if we don't, what are we?
That's it, Brian. That's it, Brian. You hit the nail on the head.
Yep. So, Doc Pete, thank you so much for joining me today, man. Oh, man, so great catching up with you. As always, we appreciate all the work that you've done on the border and in the country. I mean, all your years of service and everything you do for the veteran community and for our nation, to protect our nation's sovereignty every single day. Just eyes and ears on the border, doing the hard work and boots on the ground. It's truly admirable. It's truly admirable.
I appreciate you, brother. Hey, look, every American's worth it.
Amen. Well, listen, you have yourself a good day. Merry Christmas. What I like to say is Merry Christmas. All right, brother. Well, folks, there you have it. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, giving it to you straight. Love that guy. He's been on the show several times. Big show contributor. And for that, we are very blessed and honored to have him do so. But folks, we're going to wrap this sucker up. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen to this podcast. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. We're on X. We're on Rumble. Simply search Today with Tally. It should populate, and go check out all of our episodes. I think we've got over 270 episodes now in just 2 years and 3 months of this podcast birth. And It's been a fun ride for sure. So also learn more about me and my personal story, even get my new book over at briantalley.com. That's briantalley.com right there on your screen. You can also listen to all of our podcasts on that platform as well. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Talley. Good night, Semper Fi. God bless.